as you kind of identified what happened the last 12 months, how is it looking for the next 12 months now that things have been established, and then the year after? Kind of what are those short-term goals?
Right. So in terms of the next 24 months and things that you can expect from the Army, one, a renewed focus on the enterprise. And when you think about the enterprise, don't just think it about this. Think about it as this kind of ubiquitous thing that's out there. Think about power projection and our ability to project power around the world. The enterprise is one of the foundational aspects of our ability to project power. If you leave a post-camping station, the very first thing that you want to do is you want to talk en route to the objective area. When you are en route, you want to get feedback on intelligence from whatever the objective area to your warfighting platform. In this particular case, it's an aircraft. Once you land, you establish a command post. Well, that's also enabled by the enterprise. And when you put one of these in the hands of a soldier, the data that really drives this in the infrastructure is not there with the soldier. It's back at the enterprise. And so a renewed focus on three things with the enterprise: fixing the problems that currently exist, and some of that fixing will be through modernization; optimizing the enterprise, as I spoke in there earlier, where so we spent the last 18 months with the Mission Command Network plan to network the soldier and network the weapon system. But what we got to do now is we got to optimize the enterprise to be able to account for what our plans at the tactical edge. And last but certainly not least, so I said there are things we got to fix with the enterprise. There are things that we have to optimize to be able to really leverage the work of the last 18 months in networking the soldier and in networking the weapon system. But the last piece is modernization. And so in order to leverage technologies like 5G, that'll be a reality in the 21-22 time frame, we've got to start planning now, investing now, to set conditions for the integration of that technology 3 to 4 years down the road.
Right, you spoke of that during your keynote, kind of that shift into, instead of in a couple years just buying something, to really shaping it beforehand. Can you talk a little bit about how that culture is changing, or how you're facilitating that ability to kind of shape the requirements or shape things beforehand?
Well, so I think what you're referring to was the question was related to requirements and acquisition strategies, I think. And what I said is a fundamental part. So if you remember, I don't know how long you've been following the Army in the last couple of years.
Just a year.
Just a year.
I'm new.
And so, okay. And so a part of our original strategy, and it was halt, fix, pivot. So it was halting programs that didn't meet the characteristics and attributes of our objective state, fixing our ability to fight tonight, and then pivoting to a different way of not just what we buy, but how we buy. And that was called find, try, adapt, and buy.
Okay.
That was our original Mission Command Network modernization strategy at the tactical level. A big piece of the pivot actually had to do with this idea of DevOps and bringing operators and developers closer together. And as I explained it in the forum, and hopefully that came across, so the delta between the actual requirement and what the soldier actually needs, if we don't get that right, it manifests itself in terms of complexity in our formations. So to your question, I believe the one you're asking, what I was trying to articulate is the need to get industry closer to the user in an experimental or developmental kind of environment with live soldiers, so that in the end we leverage that construct to inform requirements, not write the requirement, give it to industry, they go deliver, and by the time it comes, it's not what the soldier needs. And so leveraging this DevOps model, leveraging experimentation and demonstration, live experimentation and demonstration, is what's required to inform the future requirements.
And can you talk about the CFT's role as far as the network CFT?
Uh-huh.
I know there's the NIE coming up in November.
Mhm.
I think they're going to be doing some testing.
I'm actually going there Saturday.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I'm going
Well,
out there Saturday.
no rest then. And, or do you have to fly back and then?
I have to fly back tonight and then go back to
Oh,
Fort
okay.
Bliss on Saturday.
Oh, well. But can you talk a little bit about what you'll be looking for from the CFTs as far as they're kind of looking at some of the new technologies?
Right. So first and foremost, I'll tell you, the leads for all things that have to do with modernization related to the 6 modernization priorities or the cross-functional teams in Army Futures Command. The rest of us are in support of those cross-functional teams. Most of the work that's been done with the tactical network and the mission command network has been done by Major General Pete Gallagher, who's the lead for this cross-functional team, and Major General Dave Bassett, combined with Major General John Morrison, who's down at the Cyber Center of Excellence because they work the requirements, and then Major General Doug Chrisman, who runs the Mission Command Center of Excellence out at Leavenworth. So that foursome has really been leading the charge when it comes to what we're calling the tactical or the mission command network modernization effort. When it comes to the enterprise, as a CIO, the partnership is really 3 organizations. It's me as the CIO. It's Lieutenant General Steve Fogarty, who's responsible. He's the commander of our cyber and responsible for installing, operating, and maintaining the networks, in addition to defending the networks. And then the Program Executive Office, Enterprise Information Services, PEO EIS, and Ms. Cherie Smith. And so at the enterprise level, we're really driving that piece of it.
Right, and what challenges do you see, or what are you looking for from the enterprise to be able to provide to that environment, I guess?
Well, first and foremost, we got to posture ourselves to protect our data. I believe you heard my comment in there that 90% of the data that exists in the world today was generated in just the last 24 months. That to me is a trend. If you think about cloud computing investments globally in the commercial sector, today it's about roughly 200 billion. In just 24 months, it'll be over 500 billion. In global, not inside DoD,
Right.
but in global investments, all surrounding and touching data. And so, as General Fogarty and I talk about this, our focus to date has been really on protecting our networks. But what we got to do is, in addition to, not in lieu of, okay, protecting our networks, we've got to acknowledge and posture ourselves to be able to protect our data. That is not a binary either or decision. That's an in addition to. And so whether it's identity and access management, it's not just about storing our data in a data center. If your data for your personal device is accessible to you all the time, I don't think you've ever hit your app when you had network access when your data didn't appear.
Right.
And so it's got to be mobile and it's got to be accessible. But it's also got to be trusted. You want to make sure that what you are getting is actually trusted. So a big part of defending our data and protecting our data, not defending our data, but protecting our data, whether it's data at rest or data in transit or data in use, we now, working with General Fogarty and the PEO, have got to posture ourselves to be able to better protect our data for both our soldiers and our weapon systems.
And can you talk about how the Army is leveraging cloud? You mentioned in your speech the Cloud Advisory Board and kind of bringing industry in.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, what do you think of their role, and kind of how will they help shape the Army's decision making with cloud?
Yeah. So first and foremost, anything that we do in the Army with respect to cloud is nested with the vision and the purpose and intent of the DoD cloud effort. All right, and so that's the first point. We see it's critical that we are not just viewed, but that we are actually in accordance with and in sync with where Mr. Deasy is taking the department. So when you think about what he has said, he said that his intent is to create an enterprise cloud effort that's a part of an environment where we actually learn as an institution how to migrate to the cloud. vice, as I said earlier, we've got several episodic and successful cloud efforts across the Army. But is that how we want to model the institution? And the analogy Mr. Deasy used is pretty interesting. He said, okay, if you want to build a house, you go find the best person you could find to build a house. As he's trying, articulate the importance, all right? But if you want to plan a community of houses, do you want that person to plan for the community of houses, or do you want to find somebody who knows how to plan for a community of houses? And so that's kind of where we find ourselves when it comes to data. We find ourselves in a situation where we have some episodic, when it comes to cloud, we have some episodic successes in the Army right now, but is that the model for the future? And the answer is no. What we want to do is leverage the next 24 months to be able to learn how to migrate to the cloud as an institution, which nests with where the DoD CIO wants to take us. So what I envision happening is in 19, I'd like to see 10% of the Army's 8,000 applications migrate to the cloud. And then 30%, 30%, 30% for the next few years, assuming that it's somewhere in there that will be accelerated.
Sure. And then we're getting close to 15 minutes. Can you talk about the AI task force? I think that was an idea maybe in August, and kind of anything that stood out there.
Yeah, so the AI task force, what I talked about, I think I was down at in Augusta.
Yes.
Yeah, that generated quite a few questions. And so the stand-up of the Joint AI Center is a DoD effort that was an outcome of the National Defense Strategy. All right, and that was yet another Pathfinder project that's intended to create an environment where we learn actually how to do this. What the Army did internally is, so across the depth and scope of the Army, we have multiple, I'll call mildly successful AI efforts that are out there, and there are several. But again, is that the model? And so two things we've done. One, we've contributed to the Joint AI Center effort, and they had 3 national mission initiatives that they established. One of them was building on an intelligence platform effort. The second one was this concept of the ability of predictive maintenance and logistics. And then the third one was humanitarian relief. I mean, just think about the amount of data that's generated every time that there's a national disaster from places like our social media feeds, et cetera. So those were the established 3 mission initiatives, and the Army's contributing to the stand-up of the JIAC. Internal to the Army, to answer your question, we've actually stood up a AI task force. And the purpose of intent of that AI task force is to start to build internal capacity. I talked about Blue Team. Start to build internal capacity so that the Army, A, understands what's in the art of the possible, B, can prioritize its efforts, and then C, understands concepts like every one of the 6 modernization priorities that I talked about likely have an AI contingent to them. And so this AI task force is essentially stood up to be able to inform the senior leadership of the Army on A, what's happening above us at the Joint AI Center, but B, what direction we should be headed internal to the Army, if that makes any sense.
Right, sure. And I don't want to take too much more of your time. Just maybe one easy question. I remember that you're a Steelers fan. I remember.
Yes,
and
I
spent some time in Pittsburgh, so I'm a huge Steelers fan.
Okay.
What do you think their chances are against Baltimore next week?
We're winning it all. It's going to start next week, and we play the Ravens next week?
Yes,
yes. Yeah, we need to win it all this year. It's going to happen. I can feel it.
I hope so.
Yeah, I can actually feel it. And I did want to take the opportunity to thank you all. You've got tough jobs.
Well,
you
not
bring
as
people in.
tough.
Yeah, you got tough jobs though, because you're trying to ask the questions that on about things that people want to hear about, and you're trying to get somebody who may or may not want to answer that question to actually answer the question. So my hope is that when we do step out into the arena, into the public square to have conversations with you, that you see us as authentic, that we tell you what we think, and it's not just about answering the question, but it's about making sure that you understand the why of what it is we're trying to accomplish, regardless of what the efforts happen to be. And hopefully that comes across to you all
Absolutely.
when we step out.
Right, yes.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for your time and good luck with your efforts. You do have a lot on your plate, but I can, you just, when you hear things around the industry, I do get the sense of the momentum is shifting and, things are changing, and I'm sure that's not
Yeah.
easy.
It is. It is. We actually have to implement the plan and then learn as we go. So we want to do that as quickly as possible.
Well, thank you very much, and
Thank
thanks for being so
All right.
accessible.
I'll look for your article, see what it says.
Okay, yeah, I'll be in touch with Leanne.